I've analyzed hundreds of hours of Warzone gameplay, and I've discovered 5 fatal gunfight mistakes that you shouldn't make in this game. And avoiding these mistakes helped me go from a less than 1 KD player to an over 5 KD player in Warzone, even though I was working a full-time job. Okay, starting with mistake number 1. Now how this is going to work is for each mistake, I'm going to show you a clip that one of my YouTube subscribers submitted to me of them losing a gunfight, and while you're watching the clip, I want you to see if you can spot the fatal mistake before I explain what it is. Now in this first clip, my subscriber is playing Resurgence solos and he's in control center. And while he's running around on the top floor, he gets shot in the back just as he exits the window. Now let's see if you can spot the big mistake. Okay, now there were a few mistakes here in this clip, like for instance getting stuck on this door. But the fatal mistake actually happened right here. Let me explain. Now if I'm this player here and there's an enemy behind me, if he shoots me in the back just as I get into cover, well now this enemy has to chase me to get the kill. In other words, he has to take this space right here. But if I'm smart, I don't want him to do that, because if I allow him to get to my position and I don't have enough time to heal up, he's going to have the health advantage in this gunfight and he's probably going to win. So what I want to do is I want to protect this space. I don't want to give it up for free and allow this player to push me without at least damaging him. And the good news is that this player that's chasing me is very vulnerable because he's out in the open and I have about a quarter of a second to shoot him before he can shoot me back, because his reaction time will be in the ballpark of about 150 milliseconds and the sprint to fire delay for most SMGs in this game is around 100 milliseconds. So what this means is that I can even up the damage in this gunfight and potentially win it by not giving up this space for free. Now every situation is different, but when you get shot in the back, you typically want to figure out where your nearest cover is and how much time you have before the player that shot you can get to you. You want to prioritize getting to a head glitch if you can, because it will be extremely tough to hit on the enemy's screen, or you want to get to a choke point like a window, because these are narrow points on the map that make it easy for you to hit your shots on the enemy. So now getting back to this subscriber's clip, what this player could have done differently is as soon as he took damage going out the window, he could have immediately looked back up and he would have seen that this player was full sending him. From there, he could have positioned himself behind this piece of cover right here, and then he could have gotten some really easy damage on this enemy as he fell to the ground. Giving up all this space between him and the enemy for free was a fatal mistake. Now, even though this mistake is bad, this next one can be even worse. And the clip we have here is a game of Resurgence trios on Vondel. Now, our subscriber is on a rooftop, and he hears someone's footsteps coming from the stairs in this building. Now, let's see if you can spot the fatal mistake.
He's one shot.
Yeah, even though top streamers make it look easy to push players that are pre-aiming doors, it's actually very difficult to do. And it took me a long time to figure it out, but the top players win these gunfights by finding the initial damage advantage. Let me explain. In Warzone, being the first player to hit shots is extremely important because most players in this game are on controller and aim assist is very strong, which means that people don't really miss a lot of shots once they get on target. So if I'm this player here and I know I want to push a player that's sitting inside this building, this is very risky because this player is already aiming where I'm going to be, and it's pretty likely that he's going to get the initial damage advantage if I just slide into the doorway. So there's really 3 things that I can do to hit the first shots in this gunfight. Now the riskiest play is to slide into this room and pre-fire my gun where I think the player is. The aggressive players in Warzone get peeker's advantage, which means that they see their opponents roughly 50 to 200 milliseconds before their opponent sees them, because it takes time for the aggressive player's movement data to travel through the internet to the game server. So I can oftentimes get the initial damage advantage if I slide in and pre-fire my gun where I think the enemy is. Now where a lot of people mess this up is it's really important to pre-fire, because if you wait until you see your opponent, you're going to be wasting about 150 milliseconds due to your reaction time. And if we look at this clip here, I'm on Urzikstan and I'm playing solos, and this is an example of me using this strategy. And if we slow this down to half speed, you can see that I'm shooting my gun as soon as I'm coming around the corner, even though I don't really know where that player is. But because I have good centering, I'm immediately starting to do damage on this player, and this player hardly has any time to react before I kill him because I get peeker's advantage. And that's really the power of using this strategy. But like I said, you need to have good centering and a good idea of where this player is sitting. And if you're looking for ways to improve your aim, I've come up with a guide designed just to do that. I've spent months coming up with different practice drills and a training system that walks you through actionable techniques that you can do to improve your aim on controller. These practice drills are hard to cover in a traditional YouTube format, so I've used the YouTube member program to offer something to those of you who are serious about getting better. And you can join using the link in the description. Now with that said, an additional technique that you can use if someone is pre-aiming a door is you can try to find a wallbang spot. So many people forget that there are a ton of materials that you can shoot through on all of the Warzone maps, and this is a great way to get some initial damage before you go in for the challenge. I use this strategy all the time in the buildings on living quarters on Rebirth Island. In this clip, I'm playing solo quads and I can hear that there's a player in this building. So I shut the door to confuse him and I try to wallbang through the door. Now unfortunately none of these bullets connects, but I still go for the challenge and get a pretty easy down. But right as that happens, his teammate comes rushing in, so I have to make a quick exit to reposition. But right as I do that, I run into another player on the outside of the house, which means that I have to take this fight. But you can see that I made sure to shut this door as I was going out of it, so I shoot through the door, which gives me the initial damage advantage and allows me to get the down and the full right as this other guy slides back in to challenge me. But at this point I'm too weak to take this gunfight, so what I do is I hide behind this door and then time my run to run back out of it as this player's sliding in, and I use a little bit of movement finessing to completely confuse him and give myself time to get away and reload and heal up. And all of this was only possible because I wallbanged that second player and got the initial damage advantage. Now if these first two strategies don't work, the other way that you can get the first damage in a gunfight is to use your lethals. You can oftentimes toss in a grenade and then pre-fire into the room, and now this player is going to be forced to decide between taking grenade damage or trying to move and probably taking damage from your gun. In this clip I'm playing Urzikstan solos and I know that there's a player hiding in the shack, so I simply toss in a few grenades to get some entry damage, which makes this a really easy cleanup kill. Now if we go back to the subscribers clip, there's a few things that he could have done to get the initial damage advantage. The first thing is that this door and these windows are materials you can shoot through, so he could have tried to wallbang through these spots. And the second thing is, as he was challenging through this door, he could have been pre-firing his gun, and even though he didn't know exactly where this player was, he might have gotten some lucky hipfire damage, and he just would have been more prepared to take this gunfight because he was already shooting his gun. So the fatal mistake here was missing the opportunity to get the initial damage advantage in the gunfight. Now even though getting the first shots in a gunfight is important, this next clip shows what can happen if you make fatal mistake number 3. Now our subscriber is playing Vondel solos and he spots a player flying in. He's able to get some initial damage and then he rushes in for the challenge. But as we'll see in a moment, things don't go exactly to plan. Now this mistake is a very common one and it's something that I see all the time. And to explain it, let's look at an example. If I'm this player here and I'm running around on the map and someone pops up out of nowhere to shoot me, what can I do? Well, I can try to take the challenge and hope that my aim saves me in this situation, or I can immediately get to cover and try to heal up and then figure out what to do next. The point is, I have options. Now, if we change this up a little bit, and instead of being at this part of the map, I'm now here, and the exact same thing happens where someone pops up out of nowhere, well, the only thing I can really do in this situation is try to take this engagement. There's no cover that I can get behind. So the lesson here is that your distance from cover is how committed you are to a gunfight. The further away you are from cover, the more committed you are. Now that was a pretty simple scenario, so let's look at a real clip. In this game, I know someone's camping somewhere inside this building because I can hear their footsteps. So what I do is I carefully check each corner, making sure not to slide out too far from cover. And I even pre-fire several times because I want to try to get the initial damage advantage. I don't know exactly where this player is, so I'm playing for information, and I don't commit myself to getting into a gunfight. And you can see that eventually this guy gets scared and he tries to run away, and now it's just an easy cleanup kill. And if we now go back to the subscribers clip, you can see that once he gets the initial damage on the player flying in, he pretty much full sends that enemy around every corner. Now you can do this in some situations if you have a major health advantage and have great aim, but you have to remember that the time to kill in Warzone is really fast, and one wrong move on your part can mean that you're dead before you even know it, and that's exactly what happens here. What this player could have done instead is that once he lost him and didn't know where he was, he could have slowed down a little bit and slide checked each corner for information instead of full sending. The fatal mistake here was overcommitting from cover without good information. But even if you have good information, you still have to be ready for when things just don't go your way. And that's where this next fatal mistake comes in. In this game, our subscriber is playing Rebirth Island quads and he spots a player on the observation deck that surrounds the courtyard of prison. Now let's see if you can spot the mistake. Now, I already know that some of you might say the mistake is that he could have hit more shots. And while that's true, we aren't robots. Everyone makes mistakes, including the best players in the world, so we have to be prepared for when gunfights aren't going our way. There's a power balance in every single gunfight between you and your enemy, and what determines this balance are things like who has more health, who has the better gun, who has more cover, and who has more skill. And this balance is constantly changing, and you have to be able to recognize that. But what makes this really difficult is how fast gunfights are in this game. Now this might sound a little bit strange, but what I want you to do is blink 3 times. Now that probably took you about a second to do, and believe it or not, that is longer than the time to kill for many meta guns in this game. So the margin for error in gunfights is really small, and we can see that in this clip here. Now I'm playing solo quads, and I'm in the living quarters part on Reaper's Island, and I spot a player on a head glitch in front of me. Now I'm going for a high kill game, so even though I know this is kind of a bad challenge, I go for it. But I quickly realize that this is bad, and I'm missing way too many shots, and I'm taking a lot of damage. So instead of staying in this gunfight, I disengage and I play my life. And lo and behold, a few minutes later, I get some really easy cleanup kills that I wouldn't have gotten if I died. You have to remember that when you get into a gunfight, if there's space between you and the other player, you don't have to stay in that gunfight. This isn't a Roman gladiator battle to the death where one player has to come out on top to win. You can oftentimes disengage if you feel like you're going to lose. In the original clip from my subscriber, he had the initial advantage because the enemy didn't know where he was. But once he shot his gun and didn't connect many of his shots, he could have realized that this enemy had a lot more cover than him and the power balance in this gunfight was going to the enemy. So what he could have done instead is he could have tried to push up to this tent to try to get more cover and equalize the power balance, or he could have moved to the forklift truck up here if he wanted to disengage from the fight and then try to reposition for better angles. The fatal gunfight mistake here is not knowing when to disengage from a gunfight. Sometimes things just don't go your way, and in those situations, it's oftentimes just better to play your life. Okay, this next mistake is another extremely common one, and I'm going to show you 2 clips from different subscribers demonstrating this fatal mistake, and I want you to guess what it is. Okay, well in the first clip, this player got tunnel vision on the full kill in front of him and he ignored the information on his minimap. And then in the second clip, this subscriber's crosshair placement or centering was not positioned where his biggest threat was going to be, this doorway in front of him. And this was likely just a momentary lapse of focus on the game. Now in order to be successful in Warzone, you have to be ready for a gunfight at all times, which requires a lot of brain power. You need to have sustained focus during the entire length of the match, and you also need to have good divided focus where you're able to pay attention to many things at one time. Now improving your focus is hard to do and it varies from person to person, but I have 2 ways that I like to practice this. The first is to go into Plunder and land in the hottest part of the map, which is Old Town, and then I try to get as many kills as possible with my audio turned off. If you've never done this before, you probably don't realize how much we rely on audio cues to know when someone is near us. So when you don't have that luxury, you have to check every single corner and part of the map that someone can be, and this requires a lot of focus and attention because there are just so many places that people can hide. I also think that this helps me with my reaction time because enemies will literally come out of nowhere to challenge me, and I have to try to react as fast as possible to give myself a chance to win. And then another practice drill that I think can be very helpful to not get tunnel vision is to load up a custom game on a small map like Training Facility with just 1 or 2 bots, and every time you down the bot, you want to flick your aim to a doorway or a window or some target where another enemy could be. This helps you build the habit in your brain that as soon as you down someone, you're already looking for the next threat on the map. But by far, the most important skill you need to have in Warzone to win more gunfights is to have good aim. So if you want to know the 8 fatal aiming mistakes that you should avoid in Warzone, you can check out this video right here.